All right, welcome back. So this is module 2, how the internet and applications work. So why this matters, right? Every app that you use, whether it's banking app, e-commerce platforms or social media, all follow the same underlying structure. If you understand this, you understand 70% of software systems. Software systems are built on communication. So here's the core flow. User goes on the application. The application is hosted by a server. Server stores and records the data and events in database. Database produces response. This is the backbone of the internet. All right. Now, key component. So what you see is the client, which is the front end, the server, which is the back end, and then the database. So what we call client means this is what you see as the user. That's what you call it front end. That's what you see in the front. The server is the system that holds everything, that integrates everything. All right. Even though you can't see it, but it hosts everything. All right. And all of them. And then the database, of course, is the record, the library, basically the store from which everything is referenced. Okay. Now let's go to the front end, the client. All right. The front end is what users see and interact with. It is usually built with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and a few other language, whether Python, React, and the rest. You can build them with the front end. Okay. So examples can be login forms, the dashboard, buttons, and pages, and all of that. Now the server, the back end. The server handles mostly logic and decision making. So it's all of those instructions that define how the app works. So if this person does this and this is valid or true, make this other response, give this particular response, or give this output. So all those logic and decision making reasons is done on the back end. It also does processes request, communicates with the database. You understand? The examples can be login validation. So when person puts his email and password, it checks to see if that email and password exists in the database as valid credentials. If it's not valid credentials, it cuts it off. All right. Second example, payment processing. So someone wants to make payment, it has to check whether the person has the right balance. In the wallet to make the payment. If it's valid, it then takes decisions. All of those are back end responsibility. Database stores all the application data, users, transactions, records. You understand? So when you have all those data stored, when a logic is being taken place, it will reference the database to know whether the condition is met or is available. You understand? Once it gets that record, then it takes the next decision. Now, full systems flow. Let's just look at a real scenario. When a user log in, user enter details, front end sees request, back end processes request, database is checked, and response is returned. Now let's talk about API. I'm sure you probably have heard of API before, which actually means application programming interface. This is how it works. Front end turns to back end. The app talks to other apps. So basically, in simple terms, an API is like a messenger, right? So it's like when front end are talking to back end, and then maybe other apps are talking to other apps. So what that means is that we use an API to connect the back end to the front end. So it acts as an intermediary between the back end and the front end. That's what an API is. Then it can also be API, other APIs where you integrate an external app into your own app. How many of you have done something like this? Maybe okay, yes, okay. Let's say for a sign up, you notice that there's a Google sign up flow. That Google sign up flow there is an API. So it's like another app that is not going to help your own app to handle authentication, right? So instead of you checking your own personal database for authentication, it checks Google database for authentication. I don't know if that makes sense. All right. So API in action, example login, like just like what I said. Front end sends email and password. Back end returns success or failure. All right. So every interaction follows a request sent by a client and response returned by server, which is back end. Types of requests. So you can have get, which is to fetch data, post, which is to send data, and a few other request types. There are a few other request types. We'll see all of that as we go, especially when we get to the practical expression. All right. So let's say a reward example of fintech. When you transfer money, request is sent to the server, but back end validates the balance. Database updates the transaction. Response confirms success. This happens in seconds. So why this matters for AI? The AI systems plug into the same structure. So AI is equals to part of the backend. Also, the API connects the AI to your app. So the AI is able to implement all of the codes required to effect all of this. So the AI can build the front end, build the back end, and build the API structure that will communicate the front end with the back end. All right. So key takeaways: all apps follow a structured flow. Front end, back end, database must work together. APIs enable communication. This applies to all modern systems. All right. But you must understand something before I tell you the assignment. You must understand something, that what AI does for you is that it is like your own developer assistant. You are the one supervising the project. The AI tool basically acts as your assistant and implement your instructions. All right. It will do it in a way far better than anybody you know that is developing, because it's more intelligent, has no human constraint or restriction. All right. So this is the assignment for this module. Explain how a logging system works step by step. Describe the role of front end, back end, database. Give one real example, maybe banking app, or another real example apart from the ones I've given you. I want to see that your feedback. I want to get that assignment submitted. The instruction on how to submit it will be given to you, or you'll be able to fill it in the course exam and then return it. So I'm waiting for your response. See you in the next class. We'll be discussing introduction to programming concepts, where you will learn how to think like a developer.